we will get to ordinance 2018-20-1H. Thank you, everybody. That was a good 5-minute break. Quick. I appreciate it. We're motivated. It's about 10:05. We're reconvening. It's still September 13th in the Mona Lisa Drexler Chambers. And we are on ordinance number 2018-20-1H, which is an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2018-19 budget by appropriating $50,000 from the general fund balance to the multi-year general sub-fund for a joint U.S. Army Garrison and Fairbanks North Star Borough recreational athletic facility planning charrette and implementation plan. Sponsor is Mayor Castle. It is on page 163. And Ms. Major, do you have something to say to us?
Yes, I have a conflict of interest regarding this ordinance. I have been intimately involved with the process at work.
Yeah, I think you pretty much defined conflict of interest. Thank you. You're excused. And that takes us back to a staff report, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Brittany Smart for our staff report this week. She said she thought she could improve dramatically on last week's report that somebody else gave. So to Ms. Smart this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Assembly, and thank you for your patience last week. My apologies. This ordinance is a very interesting effort. As we have identified through our community meetings regarding the sandbox group, going through deferred maintenance, we have challenges with our facilities as well as adequate sports space. At the same time, Fort Wainwright also has some facilities requirements that they are looking for, and they have embarked on a public-private partnership program throughout the nation, and Fort Wainwright applied and actually was granted one of the facilitated sessions. As part of discussions from those work sessions, it came out of this joint need for a recreational facility. The U.S. Army Garrison decided they would like to further pursue partnering with the borough to provide services that not only meets the military needs, but the borough and the community needs as well. And they have committed $250,000 for a planning effort. And to show a partnership, we are also committing $50,000 to help fund these planning charrettes, which are planned to be taking place over the next year or so. As part of this ordinance, we also are asking for authorization to enter into an MOU, and that was provided to you last meeting. I believe it is in your folders this week as well. This has been approved as to form by both the U.S. Army Garrison and the borough, and is just pending signature for the assembly vote here. Other than that, I think that kind of wraps up the report, unless you guys have any specific questions.
Okay, those will come later, I bet. So that means we're going to open public hearing on ordinance 2018-20-1H. I have 6 people signed up. We'll start with those 6, and then anyone else that wishes to speak can come forward. I first have Miss Mullis, and then I have Melody Springer. Ms. Melody, come on up and take the empty seat, please. Miss Mullis, you can lead us off with your name, spelling your last name, and telling us your neighborhood.
Carrie Mullis, M-U-L-L-I-S, and I'm near the Little Muskox.
Thank you.
So I've done a little bit of research, my forte, so it seems, and I've reached out to some of the privatized rec centers, facilities, private trainers, as such, and I've gotten quite a bit of feedback. I wouldn't say that everybody is excited that the borough is considering going against the private market. Again, historically, the borough has not always shown to be the most financially successful when it comes to buildings, making money on buildings, or the like. So even though it's only $50,000, and the Army says they'll put in $250,000, the building would still be, the maintenance would be on us. Unless they've come in and said they're going to pay for the maintenance. I believe that all the buildings that we have right now that are in such disrepair, I just don't see how spending $50,000 on a charrette to see if this is a good idea when we have all these bad ideas already in front of us. Saving money, I mean, maybe it's a great option, but not everybody in the private sector is echoing this. And so my question is, how many things is the borough going to decide that they want to go in competition with the private market before they say, okay, we're done? It's not our job. We're a Class B government, which really is a corporation. It doesn't say that y'all have to provide recreation centers. It doesn't say that you have to even transport. I mean, gosh, we lost $1,500,000 in transit this year, $900,000 last year. So when are we going to say, gosh, that horse is dead and it's not going to get up and it's not going to run again, and cut those things that we don't seem to be real good at and focus on the things that we can be good at, which isn't buildings.
Thank you. Let's see if there are questions for you. Mr. Lawrence has a question for you.
Ms. Mullis, what are the private recreational facilities that you're aware of in this community?
Well, I contacted quite a few, and some of them requested that their name not be brought up. And I understand you asking me that question, but you just have to believe that I did contact some personal trainers. I also contacted some larger facilities. I contacted a couple of smaller facilities. And I'm pretty thorough in when I look around. And so I'd rather not give the names of the ones that were, I didn't hear really anybody say, yay, the borough's going to go into competition with me. That's not what I heard. I had one woman that suggested I do research on the total cost of indoor high-ceilinged areas like indoor tennis courts, indoor soccer fields. She said that there was some big studies done in Anchorage as to the reasons why they weren't successful, and it was because of the high maintenance cost, the high ceiling, the total cost to heat that building, and for the tennis courts particularly, what she stated was there's very specific equipment that's needed to keep those tennis courts in good shape. And then she also stated that if they were going to, I mean, we kind of talked about what I heard last week was, well, maybe it'll be a soccer field, and then we can transport it over to something else, and then it can be something else. Meaning as the seasons change, they would be able to change out these areas. And basically what she said was the total cost for the high-ceilinged rec areas were not cost-effective at all, and that's why there's not as much here because of the cost.
Thank you. Did you get your question answered?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it. So I have, for the empty seat, Tamara Roselius, Scott Roselius, and then I have Gail Hazen, and then I have Mickey Rosser. Ms. Springer, thank you for your patience. Please give us your name, spell your last name, and tell us your neighborhood. You'll have 3 minutes.
Melody Springer, S-P-R-I-N-G-E-R, Rosie Creek,
Thank you.
Becker Ridge area. And I think a multi-use facility could benefit our community a great deal. It would provide something that we don't have already in place in Fairbanks. I'm in support of all the various sports enthusiasts who would be able to benefit from it, but tonight I'm speaking as a pickleball player and as a representative for our pickleball club. Pickleball is a racket sport, and it's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. You can take your racket with you whenever you travel to anywhere in the lower 48, play with other clubs there. We have many people that come here throughout the year and play with our club. And so it's a very easy game to learn and a very group-friendly game. It's, I feel that, with our long winters and the fact that we have really very limited places that we can play. We have about 4 hours a week that we're able to play pickleball during the winter, and that's it. So we would like to be able to see something like this happen, where maybe pickleball could be something that's played year-round and where we could have many courts and play quite often. I would hope that in the planning, the emphasis would also be placed on building a facility that would be able to provide the correctly marked courts, the spaces available, and time allotments so that it would be something that we could play throughout the year. Many times in the summer, especially through August, where we are again not playing because of the rain. So so an indoor facility would be tremendous. I just feel like if you dream it, you can build it, and this is a wonderful dream. I'd like to see it happen.
Thank you, Ms. Springer. Let's see if there are questions for you. Yes, Mr. Lawrence has a question for you.
Ms. Springer, where can you play pickleball in the winter?
Right now, we play at the SRC. They allow us to play twice a week for 2 hours each time. We do pay a fee to play at the SRC unless you happen to be a member. And so that's an added expense that we have in the winter that we don't have in the summer. In the summer, we play at the Big Dipper, and the Parks and Recs have been very, very good to us in providing space for us to play there.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Ms. Springer? Seeing none, thank you very much, and thanks for staying with us. So I'm going to have an empty seat if anyone wishes to speak on Ordinance 2018-20-1H. Now would be a good time to come take that seat. Ms. Rosser, welcome. Please give us your name, spell your last name, and
Okay.
tell us your neighborhood.
Mickey Rosser, Rosser, and I live in the downtown area, Denali Way. As far as this ordinance, there's so many questions and concerns I have, and I suppose that maybe a study has to be done to answer those questions. But one concern was mentioned last week by Assemblymember Dodge, that Alaska Club, they have an indoor facility, and they've been struggling. I can think of another, just a small indoor facility, the romper room for small kids, the bouncy house thing. So I just want the Assembly to think about some of these smaller businesses that, have stepped in and tried to make an improvement in the community, providing things that we did not have. And people are leaving Fairbanks, and then people start leaving, and then businesses start going down because you don't have the people. So do we really need a big facility? And I know the question was asked too, would it have pools? And the mayor said, well, it could have. And I know this would be probably an answer. The borough might think this is an answer for the dilemma we now are in about our pools. But if the military is putting in a bigger portion of the money, I have a feeling that they're going to have a bigger say than what the community, and I'm afraid there's not going to be much for community input, and then are we going to end up with what the community truly wants? And you sat here and listened to many testimonies about Mary Sy and what that facility meant, and it's small size, and it's community friendly for the seniors, the people with disabilities. Military has a tendency to build big, spend big, and I have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about going bigger and it being on base, and is it going to be accessible? and always accessible during when they had their military trainings and they locked down and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. There's a lot of questions that it just seems that we're going bigger, thinking bigger is better. And we've got some of these things available to us in the community. And I'd like to see Fairbanks grow too. And if we start eliminating businesses, that's not a good, that's, to me, is not a good sign if we're competing with them. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Rosser. Good timing. Let's see if we have any questions for you. I think I have one. I just can't think of it right now, so I'll ask you later. Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak on ordinance 2018-20-1H? I don't see anybody else coming forward, so I'm going to close public hearing.
Move to adopt. Second.
Moved by Mr. Lawrence and seconded by Mr. Gray. Assembly discussion debate, Mr. Lawrence and Mr. Roberts.
You know, in response to our citizens' concerns about competing with privately owned recreational centers, the reason I ask is I have a hard time figuring out what recreational centers we have in town. I know about the SRC, and you got to be a student basically to use that, and the athletic club. But as a parent, it's real clear to me that what this town lacks more than anything else is an indoor space for children, small children, before they get to school to run. It doesn't exist at all. And there's nothing more important for a young child than getting exercise and able to, to burn energy and just run and jump, skip. And, other than the airport, there's really no space big enough for children. And this is a project or a need that I've been aware of almost since I came to Fairbanks. So as far as I'm concerned, what this community needs is wide open spaces that can be heated and covered in the wintertime. And I think this is a good way of getting there, and certainly will be voting in favor of this ordinance.
I have Mr. Roberts, Mr. Cooper, and Mr. Quist.
So the main points have been brought up, and I just want to reiterate them clearly. We got into this fiscal situation because we took a lot of federal and state money and we built infrastructure way beyond our abilities to sustain it based on our tax base. So if we build one more big building that we're going to have maintenance costs for, we are not helping the problem. We are increasing the problem. So I don't think this is the right approach, just as I was opposed to animal shelter on the bond thing. I'm opposed to trying to build a new building to get ourselves out of maintenance things and to really, as is the selling point seemed to be, it will increase services, which increases operational costs and it increases maintenance. Now I'm sure that with the joint deal with the military they will pay for some of it, but I don't think they'll necessarily pay for all of it. I remember talking to, talking about the private competition. I think that's a very valid point. I think the more government gets involved in things, the less private enterprise does because they can't compete. I mean, the government isn't paying taxes on its facilities, and the private person's got to pay the taxes. I remember talking to the owner, Skeelan, before he passed away years ago, and he was bemoaning Birch Hill and what it took away. Now, I actually, not necessarily against Birch Hill, because that's something that's in the base. It's just really for the people on the base. It's an enclosed facility. I mean, not enclosed physically, but it's enclosed within the base boundaries. And so it's a specific purpose for this specific group who, that's one of their benefits, is like a job benefit as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not actually against that. But this is something that borough taxpayers are going to be footing at least some portion of the bill for. And we've seen our track record. We were brought face to face with that this year, and we don't need to dive any deeper down that rabbit hole till we get out of the hole we're in. Thanks.
I have Mr. Cooper, Mr. Quist, and the mayor.
So I think a lot of good questions tonight, a lot of good questions by email, a lot of big dreams by email and from other folks about what this could be. I guess I just caution us not to get the cart before the horse here. What we have in front of us is an appropriation to study what this could be, not to build something yet, not to build a specific thing yet or a specific project. I mean, I support this because I think there is a need in this community for that type of recreation. I think it's a great opportunity to partner with the Army to maybe meet some of the needs that we're not meeting in this community. But the whole point of this is to study what that could be. So, you know, I just reiterate that we're not committing to build something yet. We're committing to put money towards figuring out what we could do. So I support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Quist, and then the mayor.
Thank you. I'd also like to speak in support of this ordinance. That being said, I mean, ultimately, I do have concerns, and I think we all do, about potential cost, access, maintenance, and, you know, what the facility will actually look like and if it'll fit the needs of our community. But that's what this appropriation is trying to solve, is, you know, to establish this charrette so that we can ask these questions and answer them. I'd also just briefly like to speak to this idea that this is not appropriate because we compete with the private sector. And I mean, I find that rationale to be completely flawed. I mean, by that logic, we should not have public schools because we compete with somebody who wants a private school, or we shouldn't have borough buses because we compete with taxi cabs and Ubers. And I mean, that's just, that doesn't make any sense. This, and anyway, so in general, I'd speak in support of the ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I'm mad at Mr. Cooper because he used my analogy and all the words I wanted to use, because we do have our cart in front of our horse a bit here. This is planning to take a look at the options we have available to us, and we have no commitment long-term with it. It's to sit down and thoughtfully go through the whole process and evaluate all these different things. And people are saying, well, the maintenance is going to be on us. We haven't even talked about that. Well, we have talked about that's something we need to look at. We haven't said that the Army's going to maintain it, or that the borough is, or that the private sector is. There may be a lot of business opportunities for the private sector. We may lease parts of the building to the private sector. We might maintain some of it and the Army some of it, or us all of it, and or the Army all of it. These are things that are yet to be determined. One presenter said, well, maybe this is a great option, but I don't know. That hits the nail on the head. Maybe this is a great option, but we don't know. And this is the process to figure it out, to see if it is a great option. And I think we absolutely need to go through with it. It could be a facility that in some aspects could compete some or duplicate private sector efforts. I think we would try to avoid that, and that's, again, part of the charrette process, to look at what is available in town. We don't want to duplicate services. We want to fill gaps, and this could be a way to do it. Access was something we've already talked about, and we are in total agreement with the folks on base that it needs to be something that is accessible to the public under all circumstances. And that's why we talked about finding a location that it could be totally off base. It might be right on the fence line, so that the Army goes in one side of the building and the public goes in the other side of the building. And we could have security situations with locking doors, petitions, etc., that prevents the public from going onto the base other than just into this building. Again, that's to be determined by this charrette process. How can we do it to meet these demands? And if we can figure out how to do it so we do have guaranteed access all year long in the building for the public, regardless of what's going on base, as far as training, etc., then maybe we can do this. And if we can't figure that out, then maybe we can't. But as big and complex as this project is, and I feel is important to our community, virtually every major city in the far north, and we're about as far north as it gets, has a major indoor facility type complex for people to get viable, physical, very physical exercise during the cold months. And if any community could benefit from it, we can, because we're the coldest. not necessarily the farthest north, but the coldest, and with some pretty severe winters. And I think we're negligent if we don't at least take a look at this. And I don't know how we could better invest $50,000 other than to look at it. And just a few hours ago, I got a public comment. I'll pass it around and share it. It was my favorite public comment on this process. Has a little artwork on the cover here, and inside it says, "Dear Mayor, I hope we can get indoor tennis courts so me and my dad can play tennis year-round. I'm 8 years old and I've been playing tennis for 4 years. Owen Norton." So public comment from Owen Norton, and I'll pass it around, and thank you. End of my comments.
Any other discussion or debate here? I don't see any, clerk. It looks like we're ready to vote.
Ms. Major?
And not,
Oh, sorry. I did not cross her off. I apologize.
good.
Mr. Roberts?
No.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Tackey?
Yes.
Mr. Quist?
Yes.
Mr. Cooper?
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Dodge?
Yes. Would anyone like to change their vote? Seeing none,